Please don't cut his leg off, my grandson cried out, tears streaming down his cheeks. Sir, you fell into a diabetic coma, the doctor told me as I blinked my eyes open, confused and scared. My wife was sitting by my hospital bed, holding my hand. Her eyes were red and she looked worried. She was pleading with the doctor. Please help us. There must be something you can do to save his leg. I was in a heavily medicated daze, but I could just about make out that the doctor wanted to amputate my leg. We've done all we can to stabilize him, the doctor told her, but it looks like it's too late. I couldn't believe it. I was hours away from losing my leg to diabetes. I was 59 and had become a proud grandfather for the first time. I had plans to enjoy my retirement, to spend time with my family and travel the world with my wife, Linda. I couldn't do any of this with one leg. My life as I knew it would end in the blink of an eye. I'd be in a wheelchair at my son's wedding in a few months' time. I'd done everything my doctor told me to. And now, because I was one of the 30 million Americans with diabetes, this horrific disease was going to rob me of my retirement and put me in a wheelchair for life. Diabetes had devastated my body and made me a slave to my medication. The doctor made it clear that my leg needed to be sawn off, and the surgical procedure was very risky. There could be complications. My life would never be the same again. But what he said next was much worse. You fell into a hyperosmolar non-ketotic coma, he said. Your blood sugar level was the highest I've ever seen here when the paramedics brought you in. It's only because of their quick response that you don't have brain damage. What he said next hit me like a ton of bricks. We have to be clear about one thing. Next time you won't be so lucky. And unless you fix your blood sugar, that time could be as soon as next week. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because I live to tell the tale. I reversed my type 2 diabetes, and you can too. And it was all thanks to my adorable 4-year-old grandson, Lucas. He saved my life. Back then, when I was lying in the hospital about to have my leg amputated, I knew nothing about this deadly disease, except to take my medication. Yet this brush with death was what forced me on the unlikely journey that reversed my type 2 diabetes and changed my life forever. Since that day, I've discovered the scientific proof that you can reverse your type 2 diabetes. In a moment, you'll see the evidence with your own eyes. You can be sure it's not what you think. Forget about what you've heard about diabetes, because it's not caused by your genetics or your family history, your age, your weight, or even eating too much sugar or carbs. The truth, according to a breakthrough American study from the University of Utah, is that the cause of diabetes type 2 is a tiny lipid molecule that makes your fat cells go haywire. This molecule forces toxic fat cells to stream into your blood. The toxic fat then sticks to your pancreas, liver, and heart, suffocating your vital organs and stiffening your arteries. Stay with me for the next few minutes of this short video, because I'm going to reveal how to target this root cause of diabetes type 2 with a powerful blend of ingredients. I'll also show you how the dishonest pharmaceutical companies have set up a clever trap to hide this information and trick you into taking their meds for the rest of your life. And I'm going to share the exact method that reversed my diabetes and helped me lose 42 pounds of dangerous fat in a matter of weeks by activating a diabetes reversing mechanism that every one of us has. This solution is as simple as consuming a blend of nutrients that target and eradicate the root cause of diabetes type 2. Anybody can use this nutritional method, no matter if you're 40, 50, 60, 70, or even 80 years of age, man or woman. No matter if you've had diabetes for 10 years or 10 days. I guarantee that you can safely use this breakthrough method yourself. And even if you only succeed in getting your blood sugar under control, it'll be worth it. I was skeptical about trying it myself, but with death staring me square in the face, I was ready to try anything. And thank God I did, because now I'm free of diabetes. Freeing myself from diabetes allowed me to rebuild my life. I now have the freedom to do whatever I want. I have the energy to play with my grandson, and most of all, I'll never have to take my debilitating medication again. This breakthrough method has now helped 37,839 diabetes type 2 sufferers free themselves from the disease. People like William, 64, from Massachusetts, who wrote to say, Thank you so much for sharing your diabetes type 2 video. I am very glad that I stayed to watch it until the end, because with your exact method, I was able to free myself of my type 2 diabetes in only 5 weeks. I used to feel like a burden to my family, scared of dying a miserable death alone. But now I don't even need my meds, and I can eat whatever I want, including dessert. Or Jessica, 52, from North Carolina, who says, "Hi George, writing to you from vacation in Hawaii. The method you shared online helped me to stabilize my blood sugar and lower it to acceptable levels. And that's not all, because I also lost 36 pounds, and I'm the same size as I was at 29. I was skeptical about your solution at first, but I'm delighted I gave it a try. I'm totally free of the daily pains I had with my diabetes, such as horrible side effects from medication and eating tasteless meals. It transformed my life, saving me a fortune in medical expenses in the process, and all because I was lucky enough to find your method." You're about to see exactly how to reverse your diabetes type 2. Listen very closely. When you see how these people reverse their type 2 diabetes, you'll wish you'd found out about it years ago. You don't know about this discovery that reverses diabetes because doctors won't talk about it. It's not new medication. It's not a supplement. It's not a crash diet. It's nothing like that. The simplicity of this solution will surprise you and maybe enrage you. Pay close attention and watch this video until the end, because it will be taken down, and you can't find this information anywhere else. The $325 billion diabetes industry is furious about it, and is pressuring me with legal threats to remove it. But the main reason to pay attention to everything I say is because what I'm about to reveal will transform your entire life. Before we get to how you can reverse your diabetes type 2 for good, I have to reveal some critical information about diabetes that will shock you. Most people think nothing bad will happen to them if they have diabetes. They think they'll be fine if they take their medication. Nobody thinks they're going to have a limb amputated, drop into a diabetic coma, or go blind. But that's what this disease does to people like us. Most doctors don't tell their patients how deadly diabetes type 2 can be. They don't want to worry the public. But did you know a type 2 diabetic has a 1 in 6 chance of falling into a diabetic coma? And did you know that 1 in 4 diabetics have a limb amputated? How about losing your eyesight? Diabetic retinopathy is an eye disease that degenerates the sight of 40.3% of diabetics in the USA. More and more of us each day fall victim to the lies of the powerful diabetes industry like I did. But even if losing your leg is horrific, it gets worse, because diabetes leads to blindness, heart disease, stroke, dementia, kidney failure, and even cancer. Diabetes increases women's chances of cancer by 27%, according to the medical journal Diabetologia. High blood sugar to cancer is like pouring gasoline on fire, as the cancer cells take over your body at a phenomenal rate. And it doesn't end there, because a study published in the medical journal World Journal of Diabetes found that diabetes increases the risk of Alzheimer's disease by 65%. Some doctors are now calling Alzheimer's disease diabetes type 3. If you've been having trouble with your memory lately, it could be because diabetes is infecting your brain as well as your body. And what I'm about to say will be more important than ever, because my discovery revealed much worse than what any doctor ever told me about diabetes. If you're a victim of this crippling disease, you have to know one thing. It's not your fault. I only found out the truth thanks to a chance encounter with an unlikely medical professor. If it wasn't for this meeting, I'd be 6 feet under instead of talking to you. Which is why I had to ask myself, why did my doctor never tell me that diabetes type 2 has been reversed in tens of thousands of people? It's true. Yet my own doctor, who I trusted, never once mentioned it to me. I felt furious at myself for having blindly followed his advice. Advice which led to a sudden diabetic coma, to the brink of brain damage and leg amputation. Thousands of men and women have reversed their diabetes type 2 and now live happy, healthy lives. And it's all thanks to the formula I'm about to share with you. Now, I can understand it if you're feeling skeptical at this point, because most people believe there's nothing you can do to reverse diabetes type 2. I used to believe that too. But if you stay with me for 4 minutes, I'll show you the scientific proof behind this method that erases type 2 diabetes in 9 out of 10 people. And you can decide yourself if it's worth it. And even if you succeed in only improving your blood sugar levels, I urge you to give it a try, because that alone can add a decade to your life. When you free yourself of diabetes type 2, you will transform your entire life. Just imagine, no more worries about blindness, sudden heart attacks, cancer, or stroke. No more risk of falling into a diabetic coma and waking up with brain damage. No more blowing thousands of hard-earned dollars a year on meds that cause bloating, kidney problems, and sexual dysfunction. No more waking up from nightmares drenched in sweat about having your leg hacked off. Instead, I promise you, you'll be free to do what you want. Your energy levels will soar. The fat will melt away from your frame, and you'll improve every single one of your health markers. In a minute, I'll show you the warning sign you need to watch out for, which means you could drop into a diabetic coma at any time, like I did. Pay close attention, because this advice could save your life. I'll also show you one common vegetable that most people eat almost every day that's infected with a nasty toxin that's making your diabetes worse, not better. Before we get to how you can reverse your type 2 diabetes for good, I should introduce myself. My name's George Riley. I'm 61 years old and work for a large security company near La Crosse, Wisconsin. I'm a perimeter security team leader, and I have 6 guys in my team. I'm married with 2 grown-up sons, Mike and Julian, 1 grandson, Lucas, and another on the way. For 18 years, I was a patrol officer in the police force. Then one morning, as I was out on a bus, my leg was hit by a stray bullet which damaged my kneecap. I took medical retirement and switched to working private security because I've always felt responsible for the safety of others. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Linda. We enjoy eating out at restaurants and sharing a delicious dessert after our meal, such as ice cream with chocolate cake or warm apple pie. I'm going to tell you how you can enjoy these foods too, without guilt or worry, and be free of diabetes type 2. Telling my story is deeply emotional for me, but it's too important to keep from you, and it could save your life. I was in my early 50s at this time, and our 2 children had grown up and moved out. We were enjoying a new freedom at that time of our life. I took my health for granted because I felt fine, until one day in early March that year, I started noticing some unusual symptoms. I'd have uncontrollable cravings for sweet buns and desserts like profiteroles. I'd often be thirsty and feel tired. All this made it difficult to work. We thought it was fatigue from working shifts, but a visit to the doctors revealed something completely different. I was diagnosed diabetic. It caught me by surprise, like a slap in the face. I knew nothing about diabetes, but I trusted I was in good hands with my doctor. From that day on, he prescribed metformin, and I went for monthly checkups on my blood sugar. I thought the medication would help my diabetes to get better, but instead, it got worse over the next 5 years. My blood sugar levels became more erratic. The tingling in my legs got more bothersome. Cravings for sweet food overwhelmed me. I'm embarrassed to admit I found it hard to be intimate with my wife, and I packed on over 40 pounds of fat around my belly and back. My blood pressure went up. Nerve pains bothered my leg. My doctor upgraded my medication to metformin glyburide, but this only gave me a whole new bunch of side effects, such as bloating, kidney pains, and muscle aches. You may be noticing these symptoms too, until one night at work, I collapsed and woke up in the hospital. It was a busy night, and the stress levels were through the roof due to repeated red security alerts. We were short-staffed and under a lot of pressure. The last thing I remember is feeling very hot and confused. Next thing I knew, I was waking up in the hospital bed, lights blinding my eyes, feeling groggy. And that's when I heard the doctor discussing the schedule for my leg amputation. Right at that moment, my eldest son, Mike, came into the hospital room with his 4-year-old boy, my dear grandson, Lucas. They'll have to cut his leg off from the knee. The blood vessels are narrowing, Dr. Richardson was telling my wife. We can schedule surgery for tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. He continued, unaware that he had new visitors in the room. My grandson, standing behind him, overheard this and immediately burst into tears. "Don't you touch my grandpa. Don't cut off his leg," he cried out. "He's the best grandpa in the world." He cried and brought us to tears. And maybe Dr. Richardson had a heart after all, because he decided to delay the leg amputation. Maybe it was too much for him to see a young boy devastated. "We'll need to operate in 8 weeks or less," he told my wife after they left. Otherwise, diabetes could take his life. As you're about to find out, my grandson's innocent, touching outburst changed our lives forever. The first 2 days after my discharge from hospital, I was like a zombie. I lay around feeling sorry for myself, hardly speaking, and contemplating life in a wheelchair. I kept thinking of my son Julian's wedding coming up in a few months. Would I still be alive to see him marry his beautiful fiancée from Japan? I felt physically sick imagining how the wedding photos would look with me in a wheelchair. Linda tried to pick me up, to give me hope. But even if she put on a brave face, I knew too well that she was deeply worried. After all, I was her husband. I loved and took care of her. We had big plans for our retirement. We were proud new grandparents. All these dreams would turn to dust because of diabetes. My wife would spend her time caring for me. We could kiss goodbye to spending our winter down in sunny Florida. As I lay there on the couch thinking about my future, I knew I had three choices. One, I could accept this as my fate. I'd lose my leg and spend the rest of my life in misery, a burden to others, broke and unable to walk, travel, or live normally ever again. Two, I could get mad at the world and complain about how medicine had failed me. I could tell anyone who'd listened that the diabetes industry was a giant fraud and I was a victim. Three, or I could choose to fight back and beat this. The thought of my grandson in tears and seeing my wife as sad as I've ever seen made me mad. And that wasn't right. So that day I made a vow that I wouldn't rest until I found a solution to my diabetes. And because I knew people would think I was crazy, I told nobody but my wife. I had several weeks off work, and my first priority was to find out everything about diabetes type 2. I got to it. I spent 6 hours a day and as many nights passed out in bed with my laptop for the next 2 weeks. I researched medical studies in journals and libraries. And on the internet. What was disturbing from my research was that diabetes type 2 is on the increase all over the world, and fast. In the USA, over 30 million of us have diabetes. Another 84 million are pre-diabetic. That means over 30% of the population are either pre-diabetic or diabetic, predicted to be 50% in 10 years' time. Diabetes is now the biggest health epidemic in the country, with a diabetic dying every 6 seconds. It's also worth a pretty penny. Diabetes generates billions of dollars for the powerful pharma giants. Several big pharma companies have been caught red-handed at bribing doctors to push their diabetes pills on people who don't need them. Big pharma butters them up and offers them lucrative deals to promote diabetes drugs at events. What a racket they'd set up. I imagine the greedy CEOs laughing as they cashed in their multi-million-dollar bonus checks. Something else I found out was that doctors are so busy with diabetics that they quickly prescribe a treatment and move you on. Instead, they should be telling you about the deadly risk diabetes type 2 poses to your life. For example, one study showed that if you've got diabetes, your risk of heart attack is up to 4 times higher than the average person. Another found that diabetics are twice as likely to have a stroke. And during a stroke, your clogged blood vessels slow blood flow to the brain. If you're a diabetic, a stroke is like sitting in the electric chair. I researched hard. I called universities to question them. I found medical journals dating 10 years back. I trawled through hundreds of diabetes studies on the internet. But the advice I kept seeing was no different to what my doctor always told me. Take your meds. Avoid too much sugar. It was this so-called advice that almost caused me brain damage from a diabetic coma and took me to the brink of leg amputation. I took myself to the point of exhaustion, searching late into the night on medical research websites and waking up early, day after day. My wife had to stop me because the stress was getting too much. I decided to take a break. My son Julian was due to visit with his fiancée from Japan, and I wanted to help him plan the wedding to make it the best ever. After all, it could be the last family event of my life. The next morning, as I had coffee with my son Julian and his fiancée Noriko over breakfast, I told them about my frustrations with my diabetes research. Maybe Noriko can help, Julian said. She majored in health science in Japan. In Japan, they target the root cause of health problems. Here in the U.S. and other Western countries, we manage the symptoms with medication. And that's why in Japan, they have far lower levels of diabetes type 2, heart disease, obesity, and cancer, and why they live much longer than us on average. Then Noriko told me about a maverick American doctor who was based in Japan. His name was Dr. James Freeman, and he was known in her country for his pioneering work in diabetes. Freeman was using research from the University of Utah to develop a powerful new nutritional method to reverse diabetes type 2 for his Japanese patients. She was surprised I didn't know about it. This diabetes reversing method involved no medication, no crash diets, and no exercise. It activates a powerful mechanism which targets the root cause of the disease. Diabetics of all ages were following it from home and reversing their diabetes type 2 in weeks. And what's more, she had his contact details. Now, you may think I'd have bitten her arm off to get in touch with this guy, but I was skeptical. After all, which doctor had ever helped me fix my blood sugar? I was done with doctors by this point. But I had nothing to lose, so I emailed Dr. Freeman's office and left my details. Then 4 days later, I got woken up with a call from his assistant in Japan. "I'll make this quick," she said. "Dr. Freeman will be in Chicago next week. If you'd like to see him, he can spare some time for you." She made an appointment for Friday afternoon, and that day I drove the 4 hours to Chicago, not knowing what to expect. Dr. Freeman was a bright guy, very clear and down to earth. I quickly learned he'd lived and worked in a few different countries. He had a number of awards for his breakthrough diabetes research in Japan, Dubai, and Singapore. And his story was interesting. His parents had both developed type 2 diabetes when he was in medical school. He'd seen how diabetes had ruined their lives. The side effects of the medication, the weight gain, the loss of energy, not to mention the drain on their finances. It was painful for him to watch. He'd made it his life's mission to find a way to reverse diabetes type 2 for good, and without needing meds that damage your kidneys and cost the earth. "Let's be clear about one thing, George," he told me. "The true cause of diabetes type 2 is not eating too much carbs or sugar. It's something entirely different. In fact, Americans have decreased their consumption of both sugar and carbs over the last 10 to 15 years. Yet diabetes type 2 rates are shooting up faster than ever before. People are trying desperately hard to fix their blood sugar, but they're doing it all wrong. Here's why. Scientists at the University of Utah recently discovered a tiny lipid molecule, a foreign compound called a ceramide, which all diabetics have very high levels of. They discovered that this toxic molecule is the real cause of diabetes type 2, not carbs and not sugar. These tiny compounds force fat cells to spill into the bloodstream and clog up your vital organs, especially the pancreas, the liver, and the heart. You probably already know that your pancreas is the organ that produces insulin, but when it's clogged up with toxic fat, it can't do its job and secrete insulin. And insulin is what tells your cells to absorb sugar and energy from the foods you eat. Without insulin, sugar stays in your bloodstream and your blood sugar creeps up and up, eventually leading to diabetes type 2. This fat streams around the body, sticking to the liver and heart, and even clogging the arteries as well, which explains why diabetics are at a high risk of heart attack and often have fatty livers. Now the problem is that some of us can't flush out foreign compounds like ceramides on our own. Sure, losing some weight can help, but it's not enough for most people. No matter how hard you try to fix your blood sugar, even if you exercise daily and eat next to no sugar and carbs, it's near impossible to reverse diabetes type 2 unless you fix this one thing. He continued, "It's like trying to unblock your clogged sink when someone is pouring cooking fat down it every night. You'll try your best, but the fat keeps pouring down the pipes every night, blocking it up again. It's the same as when you try to fix blood sugar. If the fat keeps streaming into your blood and clogging up your pancreas, it'll never work. It's not your fault. The good news is we now know how to flush out the root cause of the fat, which is this ceramide compound. When you do that, you'll stop fat from entering your bloodstream and clogging your pancreas. You only need to add a powerful blend of phytonutrients to your diet that target and destroy the cause of this fat, and melt it away. These phytonutrients are powerful plant compounds that help neutralize foreign agents in the blood, repair DNA damage from exposure to toxins, and fight against inflammation. You'll find them in certain fruits and vegetables. The most powerful of these plant compounds are called flavonoids, lignans, and propaniophenols. These may sound intimidating, but really, they're simple medicinal plant chemicals you'll find in foods at grocery stores. You'll find propaniophenols in foods like in chives, grapes, dark chocolate, and cinnamon. You'll get lignans from eating squash and carrots. And flavonoids you'll find in celery, parsley, and romaine lettuce. But the key is not to get these foods and just eat them in any order. You'll need to combine them in specific amounts and take them at certain times of the day for them to work. When you do that, you'll create a powerful catalytic effect and increase their potency. This is what kickstarts the powerful chain reaction to reversing your diabetes type 2. When you add these nutrients to your diet in these specific combinations, it'll be like you finally get rid of the guy who's pouring fat down your sink every night and blocking it up. You unclog your body, clean it out, and it starts working perfectly well again, especially your pancreas. This sounded good to me, but I was a little skeptical. How does it actually work? I asked him. Well, scientists at the University of East Anglia in England first discovered that phytonutrients are powerful antioxidants that first target and flush out the dangerous ceramide compound that causes the fat to clog your organs in the first place, he told me. Then they melt the nasty white fat deposits by attacking and dissolving the deadly fat cells that sit around your pancreas and belly. When you add other phytonutrients, such as profenylphenols and lignans, it creates a potent catalytic effect that melts away every last cluster of toxic white fat clogging your pancreas, liver, and heart that's been causing diabetes. And without exercise, you'll burn away pounds of belly fat, lower blood pressure, and feel much more energetic. Then he showed me the results of his clinical trials, which were mind-blowing. For over 9 out of 10 diabetics, the toxic fat around their organs melted completely, firing up the pancreas and turning the liver into a fat-burning machine. It was as though they'd fixed their clogged, broken pancreas and liver with a pressure wash, leaving them clean, shiny, and in perfect working order. And with a fully functioning pancreas, they reversed their diabetes type 2 in a few weeks. The participants were men and women from all walks of life. There were 24-year-olds right up to 87-year-olds, newly diagnosed diabetics, people who'd suffered for 20 years with the disease, and a few cases of advanced prediabetes. His system was also melting away an average 22 pounds of excess body fat in the first 6 weeks. Most people reaching the 3-month mark had improved every single one of their health markers. They lowered their blood pressure to healthy levels, improved cardiovascular health, boosted energy levels, and even enhanced brain and memory function. How about the small number of people who didn't fully reverse their diabetes type 2? The treatment lowered their fasting blood sugar levels to around 125, meaning their diabetes was finally under control and low risk. This alone added at least 10 years to their lives. Why don't we know about this diabetes breakthrough in the U.S. and Canada? I asked him. You can find the studies if you look, George, but it's not in the media because it's been suppressed by powerful pharma lobbies who are concerned they'd lose billions if this information is made public, he replied. Then he told me he'd worked for a major pharma company to develop this treatment a few years ago, but to his shock, the research was suddenly shut down without warning. See, the problem was that his phytonutrient combination was so powerful that it would be capable of reversing diabetes in tens of millions of people over the next 2 years. It would mean the pharma company funding the study would lose hundreds of millions of dollars they pocket from pushing their daily diabetes treatments worldwide. Of course, pharma companies don't want people to reverse diabetes type 2, as it's bad for business. That's when Freeman understood how it worked. If a treatment was too good, or if results were permanent, they're not interested, and they pull the plug on the research right away. They're only motivated by profit. Their drugs are designed to keep people dependent on them for life, managing the symptoms without ever fixing the disease. At the time, Freeman was frustrated, because he had the results to prove he could reverse diabetes type 2. Both of his aging parents had reversed their long-term diabetes type 2 by following his simple protocol. He couldn't keep these results to himself, so he'd taken it to other countries like Japan and Singapore instead. And because he knew his system had to be super simple for people to follow, he developed an easy-to-follow 3-step approach that caused participants to become practically immune to diabetes type 2. Freeman's team made their system super simple and quick by giving people simple daily juice recipes with the exact quantities of vegetables, fruits, and herbs containing the phytonutrients they needed to ignite the diabetes-reversing mechanism inside them. By drinking these juices for breakfast or lunch, they started reversing their diabetes type 2 on the very first day. The potent phytonutrients in their juices protected them from dangerous ceramides and dissolved the dangerous white fat deposits. and keeps blood sugar constantly under control even when people have a cheat day. The results were beyond their wildest expectation. Not only did 9 out of 10 of the participants fully reverse their diabetes, but they kept it away for good, even 5 years on. I asked him if the participants had to lower their intake of carbs. No, replied Freeman. Most people increase their carb intake. The 3 healthiest communities in the world consume a diet with plenty of carbs and have no diabetes. Carbs aren't the real culprit. Certain types of modified oils, fake chemicals, and even one dangerous vegetable most people eat are what you need to avoid. Which vegetable is bad for diabetes? I asked him, shaken by this revelation. Kale, he replied. Then he hit me with results of a shocking new report. He said that in the 2019 USDA test on kale, more than 92% of kale samples had 2 or more pesticide residues detected. The most frequently detected pesticide is DCPA, and it's classified by the Environmental Protection Agency since 1995 as a possible human carcinogen, and prohibited for use in Europe since 2009. It causes was the exact diabetes reversing method that had been perfected for his patients. Try this for 3 weeks, he said. Then check your blood sugar levels. I reminded Professor Freeman that I couldn't exercise due to my damaged kneecap. There's not a single workout in my program, he replied. And in fact, I don't recommend that you exercise. I was a little confused, as I expected that I'd need to do daily exercise and follow a crash diet. I didn't know I could reverse diabetes with no more than a binder and some handwritten notes on it. But I trusted Professor Freeman, and I felt he was on my side. He wasn't trying to push expensive meds with nasty side effects on me like my own doctor had. So I decided to give it a try. I thanked him for his time and drove home. I started the program the very next day and was struck by how simple and easy to follow it was. I could find the ingredients at a couple of local grocery stores. The delicious diabetes-destroying shakes made me feel instantly more energetic and lighter. It seemed as though they were cleaning me out. That first night, I slept the whole way through and woke up feeling reinvigorated. I'd usually need 2 coffees to get going each morning, but this day I felt restored and more energetic. 1 week later, my fasting blood sugar was down from 287 to 196. Next week, it was down to 155. And 3 weeks after starting the program, I dipped right down to 123. I checked for a couple of days and my fasting blood sugar wavered above 135 a few times. Then I noticed Professor Freeman had added a handwritten note saying that I had to eat a little earlier in the evening than I was. I did what he said, and 3 days later my blood sugar levels were down to a healthy 118 and stayed there. The fat was falling off my frame. My energy levels were starting to soar. I'd reversed my diabetes type 2. I gave it 2 more weeks, then went back to see Dr. Richardson for my tests. He seemed to be preparing to schedule my amputation and getting ready to give me the bad news. But his expression turned to confusion, then outright astonishment as he looked at my results, then at me, then back to my results again. These numbers are off the charts, he said. To you without telling man, you're free of pride with habits or friction. Lucas. Smiling. We can go play together as much as you want. Seeing the biggest, happiest smile break out on his face was the best moment of my entire life. He jumped up and hugged me, giggling with joy. I love you, Grandpa, he said. I felt like $1 million at that moment. And, I'm embarrassed to admit, I burst into tears. The emotions were too much. The little guy was too young to understand that it was all thanks to him. 3 months later, I had a checkup and I was as healthy as I with energy. A few weeks ago, that implant. again. You can enjoy your favorite foods and desserts again without worry. Think about the tens of thousands of dollars you'll save when you stop your meds. What will you spend it on? College for your kids? The best vacation of your life? Or even a beautiful new house? You can live a long, happy life with the energy you need to do what you enjoy most. You can take vacations, eat at restaurants, play with your children or grandchildren. You can be free. All it takes is the nutritional system in this program, which I'm sending you in your risk-free copy of the Diabetes Freedom. All the hard work has been done and condensed into this easy-to-follow program. All that's left is to click the button and start using it. Almost every single person who follows this program succeeds in reversing their type 2 diabetes. And at the very least, if you improve your blood sugar levels, you can add a decade to your life. Click the button below to start your new future today. In case you have any